Hey everybody, welcome to the Numora channel. Today I'll be covering integers from the IGCSE Maths Edexcel specification. Today's video will cover both foundation and higher tier content, so let's get started. So the first thing you need to know is what exactly are integers. Integers are just whole numbers that can be either positive or negative, and this includes 0. So for example, -4, 2, and 0 are all examples of integers. Now, to use integers in your calculations, you have to understand something called the order of operations. To memorize this, you can use BODMAS. There are also other variations such as PEMDAS, but in today's video we're just going to focus on BODMAS. So first is B, which just stands for brackets. So if you see brackets, you would always complete this before moving on to the other operations. Next up is O, which stands for order or exponents, which is just something to the power of something. So for example, 2 to the power of 2. You'd complete this after you do your brackets and before the rest of these. So D is just division and M is multiplication. One important thing to note is that these two and these two are interchangeable, which means you can do them in reverse order. For example, you could do multiplication before division or S before A, and this will not change your answer. So A is just addition and S is subtraction. So for example, if we have a calculation that has almost all of these, for example, 1 plus 2 multiplied by 3 plus 4 to the power of 2, we can use BODMAS to solve this. So first is the brackets. So we will just do 3 plus 4, which is 7. Next is O, or order. So that's just 7 squared times 49. Next is multiplication, because multiplication is before addition. So 1 plus 98, and then 1 plus 98, which is just 99. So this is how you would use BODMAS to complete a calculation. So next up, you have to understand a couple terms when you're using integers, such as odd and even. An integer will always be either odd or even. So for example, an odd number is just a number that cannot be divided by 2 evenly. By evenly, I just mean without a remainder. So for example, an odd number would be 3. If we were to do 3 divided by 2, this will just give us 1.5, and this is of course not a whole number, so this is why this number is odd. And an even number, such as 2, if we divide it by 2, just gives us 1, which is whole. Now you also need to understand what are prime numbers. So a prime number is just a number that only has 2 factors, itself and 1. So an example of a prime number would be 3 and 7, because if you were to do the prime tree factorizations for these numbers, it would just give you 1 and 3 or 1 and 7. And one important thing to note is that 1 is not prime, because to have a prime number, there has to have 2 factors, and 1 would only have 1 factor, which is just 1. So 1 does not meet the requirements to be a prime number. So you also need to know what the word factor means. So a factor is just 1 or 2 numbers that divide into another number evenly. This means without a remainder. So for example, if we have the number 12, 12 has many factors, but we'll just take 3 and 4, for example. So 3 multiplied by 4 gives 12, and 12 is whole. So 3 and 4 are factors. 12 also, of course, has 2 and 6, and 1 and 12, and these are all factors of 12. The next thing you need to know is a multiple. A multiple is just the result of multiplying a number by a whole number. So if we were to take the number 4, for example, and multiply by a whole number, 2, this will give us 8. So 8 is a multiple of 4. And 8 is also a multiple of 2, because 4 is also whole. They're both whole. So they're both 8 is a multiple of both of these numbers. Now, you also have to understand like something called the HCF and the LCM. HCF is just the highest common factor of two numbers, and the LCM is the lowest common multiple. If you have small numbers such as 4 and 8, it's quite easy to identify these. So for example, the highest common factor, if we were to find the factors of each of these, it would just be 2 and 2, and 4 and 2. So, and also 4 and 1. So the highest common factor here is 4 because it is present in both of these prime tree factorizations. Now, for lowest common multiple, if you have, again, 4 and 8, you would just find the multiples of these. So, for example, 4, 8, 12, 16. And for 8, it would be 8, 16, 24, 32. And you would see the first number. So here it would just be 8 and 8 because it's the first number to come up for both of them that they share. So the first common multiple for each of these numbers. Now, if you have more complex numbers, such as, let's say, 12 and 32, to find the highest common factor, you would first, again, do the prime tree diagrams. So 2 and 6, and then 6 can be divided into 2 and 3. So you can represent this as 2 squared multiplied by 3. For 32, you can do 2 and 16. And then 16 can be divided into 2 and 8 can further be broken down into 2 and 4. So this can be represented as 2 to the power of 3, 2 and 2 again. So 2, it is just 2 to the power of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can use Venn diagrams to represent this. So if we draw 2 circles for each of these numbers, let's put 12 on this side and then 32 on this side. We would take the common numbers from both of these. So 2 squared is in both of these numbers. So this will go here. There's a 3 from the 12, which does not go into 32, so we will just put the 3 here. There's also an extra 2 to the power of 3 from the 32 that we can put here. So to find the highest common factor, we would just look inside of this Venn diagram, the middle intersecting bit. Now this will just give us 4 is the highest common factor. And to find the LCM, the lowest common multiple, we would just multiply every number in this thing. So 2 to the power of 3 is 8 multiplied by 4 multiplied by 3. So 8 times 12, which is 96, which will be our lowest common multiple. Alright, now we can move on to some exam questions, as they're very good practice for your exams. So for the first question, we have to write 880 as a product of powers of its prime factors. Alright, so what we can do is we can just write 880 as its prime factor tree diagram. So here, we can just divide by 2, which will give us 440. We can just repeat that as it's the easiest method. So 220, we can divide this by 2 again. 22110. Now here we can split this into 11 and 10, and this is easier because 11 is a prime factor, so we don't have to break it down from here. Now 10 can be shown as 2 times 5. So now we can just rewrite this as 2 to the power of 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 times 11 times 5. So let's just write that down here. Now for the second question, we have to find the highest common factor of these two numbers. So first thing you want to do is you just want to inspect the numbers here. in case you notice that one might not be fully broken down. So here we have 16 times 3 to the power of 37. 16 is not a prime factor, so let's just break it down into its factors. So 2 to the 8 can be broken down into 2 and 4 can be broken down into 2 and 2. Now this gives us 2 to the power of 4. So that just becomes 2 to the power of 4 times 3 to the 37. Now that we've had it broken down, we can draw our Venn diagram to make it very nice and simple for us to understand. So 2 is common in both these numbers. So we can put 2 here. Let's put A here and B here. So we still have a remainder of 2 to the power of 3 on the B side, so this will come here. Now 3 to the power of 37 is common in both of these numbers, so we can put that in here. And then the remainder, 43 minus 37, 6, so 3 to the power of 6 can go here. Now to find the highest common factor, what we do is we multiply the numbers in here. So if we were to do 2 times 3 to the power of 37, that's a very large number. So let's keep it written like that, 3 to the power of 37. Question 4, find the lowest common multiple of 28 and 105. So at this point, you know you have to break it down into its prime factors. So 2 and then 14, and then 2 and 7. So 2 squared times 7. And for 105, we can break this down into 5 and 21. And then 21 can be broken down into 3 and 7. So now that we have our factors, we can draw our diagram. So 7 is common in both of these, so we just put it once here. There's only 2 and 2 on the 28 side, so let's just fill that in, 2 and 2. And then there's 5 and 3. So to find the lowest common multiple, we multiply all the numbers in the Venn diagram. So this will give us 4 times 7 times 5 times 3, which is 420. And that's it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. Please leave your feedback in the comments, and thank you.